Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here and we're back in Planet Coaster for another Rolling Springs update. We've done a lot of work, especially in the central area of the park. So let's go ahead and head that way and show off everything that's new. Making our way to the Venetian Carousel, this is when things start to change, at least on this side of the road. As we keep walking down this main path, that eventually gets us to the antique car ride, as well as over to the South America section of the park, which we'll be visiting that a little later. I did some more work there. But as we're walking over, you can see the antique car ride has a new look. I've changed the paint scheme on it, but that's because of a new workshop piece that you'll see on the back of this fence. For Morris Motors, I think it's absolutely amazing. You can find this on the workshop. But you'll also see this poster is placed on a fence that is currently on the back of a brand new building. Now, we'll see what that building is in just a moment, but you can see some backstage if we go through the fences here. Just some trash cans for now. We'll get some more detail work in there soon. As we keep walking, though, you can see even more buildings. This one pretty massive. This is going to be a giant gift shop. Not necessarily the entry gift shop that we have already, right? But this is probably going to be the biggest gift shop in the entire park, and it kind of reminds me of the Ghost Town gift shop at the back of Knott's Berry Farm's Ghost Town. If you know what I'm talking about, it has multiple ways you can pass through and kind of cut through parts of the land, and it is crazy big. So while I only have the exterior done, well, not even done, I still have to do more detailing on this part. It is here now, and it looks really, really cool, and it does a good job at filling out the space in between the two pathways, and of course there will have to be a lot of interior detail work on this building especially, just because it's going to be a full merch location. So I want to make sure it looks like that from the exterior because the doors are so big and you can look inside so easily. Now we're back at the carousel, except this time we're going to take a right-hand side look at the main pathways as we head to Riptide Rush. We'll get to the buildings I was talking about earlier in just a moment, but as we walk into the queue, you can see I've actually done a lot of detail work here, and it's looking pretty dang nice. I will say there's a lot more I want to be able to do for the kind of giant wall graphics that I have built up. It's supposed to mimic the sign out front. However, I don't know if I did a good enough job on a lot of this, but yeah, it's just multiple waves going back and forth, pretty much creating a riptide. So it's really, really cool to see all of this, and especially finally be able to walk through this queue. I still have a lot to do in this area, tons of shade work and plant life and just a lot of stuff to do in the future. As you can see, the trains rushing by actually on both sides. It's kind of nice. I was able to get 4 trains running on the coaster. Not that that would be realistic, but it is cool to see 4 different trains going back and forth. But as we're walking through the rest of the queue, you can see the main detail piece is realistically this lifeguard post that is pretty cool. You can find this on the workshop as well. I think it fills out this rectangle pretty dang well. And then we have a transfer track for, of course, the other pieces of track that the trains would be stored on when they're not in use. And because I do have 4 trains on the coaster right now, that technically wouldn't work. I'd need to expand it 1 more, but that's okay for right now. If anything, I'll change it back to 3 when I feel like it. It's just nice to finally get the dueling moment on every single cycle on the other side of the circuit. Man, it's looking really good with the transfer in, and then it even stopping before it goes into the station is a nice thing to see. And as you can see, speaking of the station, this is here. There's a lot of Z fighting all over it. I'm not near done on this. I'm just trying to get the basic shape figured out before I go into actually the textures that will be used and whatnot. There is a fast lane service in the middle of the queue for this ride, unlike some of the other rides in the park, which will have a fast lane entrance from the exit. But as we walk into the station, super bare bones as of now. I haven't really done too much. I just wanted to make sure I shaded everything in. I am going to cover the operator's booth, at least from the in-game operator's booth, and put it in a different spot with an animatronic or 2. but I want to make sure I can see that amazing airtime hill from this station. I think it's just such a cool flyby moment. As I start to fly myself on top of the roof, if anything, we can get an amazing view from here of the ride going around, as well as the boomerang in the background, which will make it over there in a moment. As you can see, there's even a new coaster over there. I'm not sure if we're going to keep it there or not, but we'll talk about that once we get over there. But yeah, let's just go ahead and watch it race around before we head to the other side of the coaster and get some more updates from that side of things. Man, I'm so proud of this one, honestly, and I can't wait to see it all finished up, which hopefully by next episode it will be completely finished, as you can even see some more details that we'll get a closer look at right now. So as we see the coaster racing around from another perspective, I have not completed the fence line quite yet. Just kind of annoying to do that, so I've kind of tried to avoid it as I've been working on everything else around it, like the Tidewater touch pools, which we looked at last episode. We're going to keep walking. You can see what I've got marked out still for Grimm's Grove, the restaurant, as well as the mini gift shop and whatnot. But yeah, nothing has changed here, so we'll just make sure to turn around and look at our Boardwalk Arcade building, which obviously still have to do a lot of interior work in here. This is very, very bare bones right now. I'm not a big fan of doing interiors in this game because it's just such a pain, but I do have to do a lot of them. But you can see our bumper cars have a couple more details to them, and this was a new name brought up by my buddy the Fish. This is the Herniator. I think it's kind of funny because, you know, bumper cars, if you hit it just right, it could make it feel like you're getting a hernia. But yeah, I'm loving the name for it. And if you guys have any names in mind for rides that don't have a name yet, put them down in the comments. I would really appreciate it, as well as figuring out the names of lands, especially the South America land. I'm not sure what I want to call that yet, but we'll get over there in just a moment as we start walking by this Skyrocket 2. That's right, we have a Skyrocket 2. This was built by Intim 305 on the workshop. I did some customization with the circuit to make it run more realistically, so it actually hits 70 miles an hour. It runs over the top at the right speed. But yeah, an amazing model from Intim 305. And actually, let's get it testing so you can kind of see how it rolls. I'm not sure exactly where I want to put this yet, but I did find an amazing sign for a ride called Thresher on the workshop, and I might want to use that for this. But if I'm using that name, I feel like it needs to be close to the boardwalk section, and I would feel kind of bad about having this right next to the boomerang. You know, it's just like cloned model next to cloned model, which I guess isn't the most unrealistic thing, because we have things like Six Flags New England with two boomerang models that were right next to each other. But still, I just find it kind of odd. And also the skyline gets kind of messy with the boomerang and the Skyrocket 2 right next to each other. And yes, unfortunately, I can't have it pass through the station again. It's just how the game works. But that's as close as I could get it, pretty much, unfortunately. But as we look to the other side, you can see I have a bunch of pretty much husks of buildings for Boardwalk Games. So we're going to have a full section of Boardwalk Games on the backside of Boomerang. It just made sense to me that, you know, the Boardwalk section is going to be the one with all the Boardwalk Games, right? So I'm excited to see all these fleshed out eventually. This is going to take me a long time. So just making sure I have the buildings in place to show off where they're going to be is kind of exactly what I want at the minimum right now. Just to know exactly what places are filled out and can't have any extra details like take up the space that they're already taking up. So as we walk by Boomerang, we're going to get a look towards Anaconda. I'm not sure what to call this lake yet. I'm thinking Anaconda Lake potentially, but this lake would have been around before Anaconda popped up in the early to mid 90s. I've got a full timeline going now, so I'm excited for that. But I want a big fountain show, a daytime fountain show to take up this part of the area, and I'm super excited to hopefully either find something on the workshop or do a custom fountain show. I will say the custom fountain show will take forever, unfortunately, but I'll see what I have to do. Hopefully by next episode we will have something in the lake, as well as a border surrounding, and maybe even the rapids kind of detailed up a little bit. But as we keep walking, we're going to head into the South America section, and before we get a look at some of the massive improvements, you can see more boardwalk games in this land as well, across from Arachnid. So let's go ahead and get another look from the other side. As we stand on the boardwalk itself watching Boomerang, you can see some extra details on Riptide Rush in the water, some amazing like buoy props from the workshop. Just absolutely incredible stuff all around in the workshop. I spend way too much time in there now, but as we keep walking, you can see kind of a backstage area for this building here, which is really cool. But let's go ahead and go back to the front of the Tidewater area to get a look at that building we saw towards the very beginning of the video. You can see next to Rocktopus, a brand new building is sprouted up with the operator booth enclosed as it could be. Sadly, it did get really close to clipping and would actually clip if I moved the wall just a tiny bit. So maybe I can go in and change that a little bit more with making it its own building or something in the future. But this is still pretty cool to actually have an indoor operator booth, especially for a ride that would have been here for a long time. But as we walk around the side, you can see some more plant life and the name Driftwood Dive. It's a burger joint. It's looking pretty good. Would have been around when there was still a diving show in the central pond, so I think that's kind of a nice nod to that. So this building wouldn't have been changed with the updates to Riptide Rush existing in the park, but it is cool to just kind of have this older building that's been here a while, has a nod to an old thing that doesn't exist anymore, and has some nice surfing details added on, as well as like a nice little drink stop and whatnot. It's pretty great as I get myself trapped on an umbrella as usual, but it gives you a nice view of the roof where I put some driftwood planks all over just to allude to that idea. I think it's pretty cool. I'm excited to put all that detail on all the other buildings. You can see actually this is the other side of the gift shop, so guests will use this as a path through like crazy. And then a restroom over there, as well as a restaurant, which is what we passed earlier. But let's go ahead and get a look from over there. So as we're looking at the new restrooms, you can see Arachnid and Anaconda peeking over from the tops of the roofs. But let's go ahead and walk through into the new entrance to the South American section. I love this sight line. I think it's pretty dang cool with just like some of the palm trees. You know, more of that exotic plant life with a restaurant to our right. We'll go in depth with that in a second. And a little kind of vending machine slash game stop. Just to kind of fill out the space more, and you have that cool snake motif on top. Really loving how this turned out. I think it's pretty dang cool. The theme switch has been actually pretty decent. I've still got a lot of detail work to put into this area for sure, especially between that transition from the lands. But let's go ahead and take it from the other side. Let's go ahead and get a view from the other side with the Plants of the World tunnel. You can see this restroom actually in real life would probably pass through to the other side. It wouldn't be, you know, two separate sets of restrooms. But I was able to keep this sight line intact as much as possible. I will say the building does kind of peek out a little bit too much, so I might want to change that in the future. But we were able to keep this sweeping left-hand turn of Anaconda into the loop over the lift hill. That view is just amazing, and you can see all the trains like popping in and out around the plant life. It's such a cool effect. But yeah, walking in from this side, obviously not anything has changed for Hovering Hawks or Anaconda or anything like that. Even Arachnid hasn't had any changes. But we did just fill out this section a lot more with some plant life, as well as some cool little photo moments potentially with this statue head kind of sitting here to fill out the blank green space that you'll see in Planet Coaster all the time with the pathing system. But let's go ahead and look into this restaurant. You can see some outdoor seating. This is technically another quick service restaurant, but there's just a lot more theming as well as seating all around for it. Probably too many ceiling fans, actually. I've got a lot of detail work to do in here in the future. But in my mind, because this is kind of a dig site, right? An archaeology site in general, as you can see with like Anaconda. If you go back to our first episode, there's a lot of nods to that. This is kind of like the pop-up museum for all of the interesting artifacts they've found. And of course, I want to be able to have some more in here and some different ones outside of just, you know, wall tilings, but I'm excited to see all of the detailing work in the future for this, because I've also got to change some of the clipping that is decided to pop up with, of course, the other themed walls on the other side. But yeah, super simple, just a coffee, chicken place, and of course you can get your drinks right there, and an ATM machine as well. But it's another nice pass through into the boardwalk section. It's really, really cool to have all that. And of course we can go backstage real quick. Didn't want to just have trash back here, so we put some drink carts that aren't in use currently back here, and you would just roll them out through the fence. Or, you know, we do have a cart that would be able to be driven around outside of park hours, of course. But yeah, it just kind of disguise that as much as I could with some plant life, but of course it doesn't need to be that disguised. That would have been an older building in general that just got a re-theme when the new land opened in the mid-90s. So it's pretty great to see all this finally kind of getting fleshed out. And actually, let's go ahead and take a look from up top. You can see from above that the buildings kind of just frame the walkways now, and I gotta say, it is such a cool thing to see. I love seeing just everything more fleshed out. It's really getting to that point where I'm excited to see more progress. I keep doing things in this game that make me just want to keep playing, and that's kind of crazy. It is nice switching themes every week, and I hope you are too, because we're gonna keep making these until Planet Coaster 2 comes out, or at least until this park is finished in potentially a couple different ways, but we'll talk about that later. I hope you all enjoyed. I know I did, but thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.